Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Cassie. I'm the director here in the UK, representing the Americas, UK and Europe. Based here in London, I moved from Australia to the UK 9 months prior to the pandemic to commence my role with Tourism and Events Queensland. Never imagined that the travel landscape would have changed so much over the last 2 years, and I wouldn't have been able to travel back to Australia for so long. I was very fortunate to be able to come back down under back at Christmas. But in the next 30 minutes or so, I want to take you on a little whistle-stop tour of my side of the world and give you a bit of a flavour for what it's like on the ground and what we've been up to. I know some of you know these markets in great detail, and others of you may not be so familiar with the landscape, but hopefully there's going to be something of interest to all of you. So we'll start off with a bit of a market update, go through some consumer research insights, and then move through to the marketing approach and activity summary for what we've been doing. Before we jump into the market specifically, I guess it's worth noting that I've been busy recruiting over the last few months. Some of you may have seen the announcement that came out last week. So very sadly, Emma Rowan, our trade and marketing manager here in London, left us last week. But in exciting news, I have recruited Alison Lee, who works for Tourism Australia here in the UK. So she'll be joining us on Monday. Also joining the team on Monday was Laura Jones. So not Laura Jones, who already is and continues to work in Brisbane, but new Laura Jones, who is based in New York. So very excited to have her joining us. And then in a few months' time, due to German employment law, we are still waiting, but excitedly awaiting Stephanie Hubner to join us to represent the European region based out of Germany. We've also, in the last 6 months, brought on board PR support in the US. That's Lisa, and we have Ella based in Germany as well. So lots of coverage to support myself and Naomi Pedlow, the PR and communications manager here in London. So jumping into the sort of pre-value of these markets pre-COVID. So the Western markets accounted for over 676,000 visitors to Queensland in 2019. Australia always features high on bucket list, well, high on intention, the so-called bucket list. But actual travel to Australia does drop off a little bit because of what are perceived as the 3 traditional barriers. So this is the time, distance, and cost effects. However, when we do get these travellers from the UK and Europe and North America, onto the plane, they do tend to spend longer in market. They visit Queensland. They also disperse more widely across the state as well. Germans are often booking 3-week itineraries and often self-driving. The UK has a really strong VFR and working holiday maker ties, but it also has a really strong 2-week holiday ethos as well. The Brits always like to have their 2-week holiday every year. Americans do tend to take shorter trips. However, it's worth noting that they do travel to multiple destinations, and they do spend more per night as well. And another thing I've learned recently is that the Canadian traveller is more in line with the UK traveller in style of travel than the American traveller potentially as well. And I've realised I am right in front of those numbers, so I'll move over so you can see those, and then I'll move back. Okay, so you'll have all seen this slide. It's been presented a few times in a number of forums. As you're all aware, the borders are open to Australia, so Americans, Brits and Europeans can now travel. And the good thing about my markets is that there's no quarantine restrictions upon return. I think worth noting, just to give you a bit of a flavour of like life, well, say in the UK and the US, I was in the US last week, no noticeable COVID restrictions in California, no masks. I did have to do a lateral flow test before flying into the US, but that was the only restriction. Living in the UK now, there's in fact 0 restrictions on travel or everyday life, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. So if you get COVID, you don't have to isolate, though most people still are. You don't have to wear a mask, and there's no testing for anything, travel or activities or anything. So life is supposedly back to normal. There's a lot of COVID around, so people are getting sick, but thankfully hospitalizations are down. So life's back to normal, and travel is definitely back to normal. The North American distribution landscape. With many of our key operators in North America being Australia focused, it's been an exceedingly challenging period for North America, for the North American KDPs. Aussie-focused partners have had to reinvent themselves and branch out, contracting and selling other destinations across Europe and Africa. And last week, many of them expressed to me when I was in LA about the challenges that they're having recruiting res sales staff. They're now looking countrywide. Some of them are even looking internationally to New Zealand and other places to try and recruit their staff, because they're really struggling to get the staff to meet the demands and the pent-up demand that's coming through. So the landscape's definitely changed, and it's much more spread out, home-based, focused than it was before. But overall, for the month of April, airline capacity for Australia was at 53% of the April 2019 level. So it's a good start for us. When Qantas restart their San Francisco base and we get more of the A380s back flying, and that will really help capacity and open things up as we go into the US summer. So moving on to the UK distribution landscape. Historically, it's been a very trade-led market due to the complexity of Australia as a destination, or should I say perceived complexity by the Brits. Travel agents have become increasingly important, more so than even they were before, just because of what's happened during COVID. So this, you have that added security if there are COVID disruptions or cancellations. So whilst the industry has suffered losses and the distribution landscape has consolidated over the past 2 years with the losses of the likes of SDA Travel, Oz Travel, Travel2, the trade continues to be key. Similar to the US, those staff numbers have reduced, and those who are product managers for Australia and New Zealand are now likely to be covering many other destinations as well, so their time is scarce. However, we have been in close contact with key distribution partners throughout the pandemic, delivering training and insight sharing, resulting in sustained trade relations with them. In terms of some other research, I was reading an ABTA travel trends report. So ABTA is the Association of British Travel Agents for 2022, and they stated that they are expecting to see the catch-up consumer, holidaymakers that are going to make trips that they missed out on by upgrading elements of their next holiday or opting for a bucket list destination. And the new age of the expert, people are looking to, as I said before, book with a travel professional next year, or now this year, as they seek out expert help and advice with travel requirements. Moving on to the European distribution landscape, I guess historically, similar to the UK, the key European markets have been very trade-led for Australia as well. And like the UK, travel agents are increasingly important because of the security in case of disruption. Specialist companies such as Australia Tours in France or Australia Tours in Germany both expanded their offerings and covering a wider focus of destinations too. So from aviation perspective, touched on a few bits from the North American market from connectivity perspective, but from the UK and Europe, we very much rely on connectivity to Australia. I mean, I guess except from the QF1 and 2 flights from London to Perth/Darwin. So yeah, we're seeing discussions with Emirates, Malaysia, and Singapore Airlines are all key airlines for us out to the UK and Europe. And excitingly, with Qatar now securing the route through into Brisbane, there's a lot of scope to work with them, and they're very excited to work with us, both out of the UK and Europe. But also we've had interest from some of our KDPs about exploring this as an option for an East Coast connectivity out of East Coast of the US to Brisbane. And then hopefully when China starts reopening a bit more with Hong Kong being under that umbrella, hopefully we'll see Cathay Pacific coming back into importance. Yeah, trade partners are really going to be looking for different route opportunities. Like there's a lot of constraints at the moment around capacity, and in recent weeks with fuel surcharges or price increases, that's certainly something that they're looking for that flexibility across North America, UK and Europe. So a partnership approach to priority routes, really, as you know, with the aviation announcement of 200 million Australian dollars in total partnership funding, and a new strategic director has been appointed. There's going to be stronger partnerships between the airports, of RTOs and regions, and T&Q to reinstate and grow services and attract new routes through to 2025. So we're going to be working in conjunction with the airports to identify priority routes. I think one thing that's been really obvious since people are starting to sell is that the domestic connections that we really need to see come back into play. So we definitely see there's opportunity for Sydney and Melbourne where needed and relevant as an Australian gateway, but it's also really important to see that connectivity between key destinations. So we all know about the Sydney Rock and Reef traditional itinerary, and for that to really work, having the Cairns to Uluru connection is really key. But the other route that we're hearing that people really want to get back into action is the Cairns Hamilton Island. So we've had several queries on this out of the US, UK, and I think I had one out of France the other day too. So we're working to influence the carriers and sharing insights from trade partners on future demand. We'll be additionally looking to ensure activities connected, tactical aviation partnerships are accessible to be leveraged through trade as well. It is a very dynamic environment. Current schedules change on a daily and weekly basis, and things are being brought forward. Airlines are really looking just to be responsive to demand, and but they're also facing the same challenges that everybody is with sort of standing up teams again and restarting operations. Media landscape. So the pandemic has had a profound impact on the media landscape across all our markets, acting as a catalyst and accelerating media transformation and a shift towards a more digital landscape. It's a slightly smaller travel media landscape means a more competitive environment to secure coverage. Now the Australian borders are open, we've seen a strong appetite for travel features across all markets, and an opportunity to capitalise on interest and pent-up demand, because before and continuing, publications just won't feature destinations that aren't open. So we're now on the right side of that. Trust in media has been in decline for years, but data on social media journalism and trust in journalism from the Reuters digital report has demonstrated that the pandemic has put journalists back to a place of respect in homes and communities where it's previously waned. We have seen a number of publications fold across the region, but there's still a place for print media as part of the wider marketing mix, given the age demographic it reaches. And ad revenue will slowly rebound across print outlets like the Times and the Telegraph in the UK. And they've been investing heavily in their digital offering and platforms. Trends we saw developing ahead of 2020 have now become mainstays, such as the shift to digital, e-commerce, and the need for greater personalization and media targeting. So moving on quickly to some consumer insights. So this is Tourism Australia's latest travel sentiment tracker. So this was the fieldwork that was conducted in March 2022. So results are somewhat mixed for the UK. So we've seen a big downturn in consumer confidence. So the reasons for this would be that there's a big focus on the war in the Ukraine at the moment in the media, and the cost of living has been on the steady rise. So as of on Friday, the 1st of April, utility prices doubled. Petrol is now the equivalent of 291 Australian dollars per litre, which I think, even though your prices are high, I think that might be double what you're paying. So yeah, everybody's feeling a bit stretched and a bit sort of worried about the future and what that's going to hold. However, it hasn't dampened travel intention, and travel intention is on the increase, and currently travel intention in the next 6 months is up to 39%, and definitely seeing a lot of Brits traveling. So school Easter holidays started for some and start next week, and like everybody's traveling, so everybody's getting away. I also ran some Google search trends analysis, and that really paints a great picture as well of the growing interest in Australia and specifically Queensland since October 2021, with the interest really spiking this year since the borders opened. Search terms including travel to Queensland, travel to Brisbane have been steadily growing in terms of interest. And we've actually also outperformed in the UK, USA as a destination in terms of holiday search interest. EasyJet, one of the budget carriers over here, carried out a poll as well a couple of months ago, and stated that Brits are planning more holidays than usual in 2022 to make up for lost travel experiences over the last 2 years. And if only, one of the key partners in the UK have seen luxury package sales rise significantly in recent weeks. They said that their average booking values have increased by 44% versus 2019, as agents book more higher-end 5-star hotels, and they've also seen a 25% rise in booking duration. Moving on to Germany. Sentiment in Germany was generally holding up well, but since the outbreak of the war, consumer confidence has slipped. Similar to the UK, but travel intention is lifting, and the strongest growth of travel in the next 6 months. And also, there's been a massive jump in the Australian safety perceptions, which has strengthened to 82%. I won't go into all the slides for Europe, the other countries that we cover in Europe, but it's a largely similar picture there. Sentiment in the US is on a slight increase this year, actually, and the perception of Australia as a safe place to travel has had a big jump as well, up to 67%. In a different piece of research that I got from Virtuoso, it was a poll at the start of the year. 85% of travelers said that they are ready to travel. They are in a ready to travel mindset. The intent to travel is strong, and with 86% of travelers polled saying they are planning to travel internationally this year. So moving on now to what's happened since the border opened and our reopening plans. So these are some of the pictures from sort of that initial reopening. We were really excited and heartened to see the response across the markets with the announcement of the Australian borders opening. Trade partners were reporting like busiest days ever, Australia inquiries being sky high, general excitement and positivity over the last 2 months. And in the recent few weeks, we've been hearing lots of reports of people hitting like pre-pandemic levels of sales, which is really great to hear. So what have we got here? We've got the trade partners were really quick to react with consumer emails on the day. We had some anecdotal feedback over the last few weeks. Liz Cairns, the head of product from Partnerships of Flight Centre. The week after border opening was our biggest day ever for inquiries, and all driven by Oz opening up. Audley said that March was their biggest sales month since February 2020, and we keep exceeding our busiest day for Australia's sales ever. So it's quite a statement. You probably would have seen Tourism Australia had some high impact placements in Times Square in New York. They had one here in London at Piccadilly Circus, and they've got the side of the embassy in Paris, which you can see the Eiffel Tower in the background. But they've also really launched a large scale campaign across TV, out of home and digital. So that's their Don't Go Small, Go Australia campaign, which has been getting some good cut through. And then, so from a media perspective, following on from the initial burst of coverage around borders reopening in February, we've continued to see media outlets across the markets run a steady stream of Australia and Queensland focused features. They've ranged from recommendations on where to visit, links to key news hooks, to more utility pieces on what to expect when arriving down under. The team have also seen an increased appetite for media visits. 80 is on the horizon. We expect a number of journalists from across Western markets to travel to Queensland. And separate to that, there's also a number of individual media visits on the table before the end of the financial year. To name a few, we have a UK journalist who writes for a number of top-tier publications, including The Times, Telegraph, Tatler, and Condé Nast Traveller, visiting tropical North Queensland in May. A Brisbane and Southern Queensland familiar is in the planning for North American market, and a visit with a German journalist based in Adelaide is planned to take place in June. The interest continues and into next financial year, with planning already underway for next year's familiars. I'll move out of the way. I won't go into too much detail on this, you can digest, but we've been busy activating activity. Well, we never stopped over the 2 years, but in terms of reopening plans, lots of activity has been going on across the last couple of months and continues to the end of the financial year, from webinars to in-person training to trade partnerships, consumer marketing, and lots of other activities too. So yeah, some of the partner activity that's been happening, that's TA led on the side here. I was in LA and San Diego in both December and last week, and had some really productive catch-ups with key partners. I was able to set up, when I was there in December, several key partnership activities, and continued those discussions when I was there last week. But there's quite a lot of activities that we are running with About Australia, Aspire Down Under, Down Under Answers, Virtuoso Signature over there at the moment. And also we've looked to where we could align with Tourism Australia on key partnerships. So we've just launched a Expedia campaign and a TripAdvisor campaign as well. The UK. So TA has had large investments in working holiday makers that kicked off before the wider border announcement commenced, because working holiday makers were able to come earlier. So a very quick take up of people coming over. They've been heavily promoting the visa refund program that's been happening, and yeah, they'll be in May aligning closely with some of the bigger operators who work with working holiday makers that are listed here. So TA are aligning closely with several of the big operators from a high yield traveller segment perspective, and running a larger campaign with Singapore Airlines too. So our activity was really looking to supplement this and add breadth to the playing field. So we've got activity live with Flight Centre, Travel Bag, Dial a Flight, and If Only partner activity as well. A seemingly lighter touch approach by TA in Europe. They were running multi-country Singapore Airlines partnerships drive bookings across Germany, France, and Italy. And we're working with Dertor under the One Voice umbrella with TA and the other SGOs on a large campaign, and that's in the final stages of execution to go live at the moment. We've also opted to work with a mix of larger and specialist operators with our own activity, and this is also now live with FTI Travel Essence and InStyle Touristic. So yeah, so from a B2C consumer activity, we have quite a lot of activity to sort of drive that awareness and inspiration about Queensland. We are, I think, on the last month of a 6-month partnership with Health and Wellbeing magazine in the UK, across print, online, and social, which has gone really well, and a really great opportunity to reach a slightly new audience. From December through till the end of May, we've been partnering with Tourism Australia on an Apple News content piece, which is across the US and Canada. And then the Times and the Telegraph partnerships with TA continue to run until the end of this year, or later this year. And And we're also currently working through new partnerships with the Handbook in the UK and a broadcast opportunity in the US. Digital continues to be a key strategy for TEQ. Over the past 24 months, we've delivered several digital campaigns in the UK, and since October, we also rolled out additional campaigns in Germany, US, and Canada. The most recent campaign was live for 6 months, and the objective of engaging and inspiring consumers about Queensland, and this concluded on Friday, and we're waiting our final results. But interim results have been very strong with great reach and engagement. It included a number of engagement driving mechanisms, including an interactive billboard that you can see here, a video unit, social media carousels. And in February, when the border announcement came, we changed the retargeting element to have a partner call to action to try and drive some sales. So in the UK, we started working with Flight Centre and began driving traffic to them. And I haven't had the latest numbers, but Flight Centre reported that in the first 2 weeks of driving traffic to them, they said that the display traffic driver became their leading display traffic driver during this period, and it was converting at 0.4% from a session to inquiry versus 0.3% across the rest of their activity. And that in those 2 weeks, they'd had 6 inquiries that had converted to a booking and generated over £6,000 in revenue. So a pretty good result for 2 weeks, and hopefully that continued for the rest of the weeks as well. So from a B2B trade and engagement activity perspective, Australia on tour is keeping us very busy right now. So there's a number of Tourism Australia roadshows. Last week we saw the UK tour taking in 4 cities, so Glasgow, Manchester, Chester, and Birmingham. In America, it's a 4-week program across 11 cities with trade and media events. Last week, that was some of the events I attended. There was events in LA and San Diego last week. I presented at one of the events, the trade event, and there was over 150 agents there. So really good to connect with them. And then Vancouver kicks off on Tuesday. And then the remaining US and Canadian cities over the following 3 weeks. Germany has a tour to 3 cities at the end of this month. And in Milan, we were presenting at 4 events on Monday and Tuesday this week. So lots of events. Training has been continuing. We've had consistent training over the past 2 years. And we're set to deliver trade updates with partners such as Virtuoso and Signature in North America, with KDPs in the UK, and of course through the established Aussie Specialist Programme across all markets as well. Trade and product manager engagement. We regularly deliver new news and product updates to product managers, and we'll continue to do so. TEQ also delivers trade EDMs, which we send monthly. So please send your news and updates. They're most welcome. We were present at USTOA in December in the US, at Unite Pacific in the UK, for the UK and Europe, and Parter Exchange in the UK in March. And I will see many of you in May at ATE. Trade media campaigns. We plan for trade media activations, particularly in the US. So we've got upcoming partnerships campaigns with Questex and North Star being some of the bigger trade media partners over there. And we're also part of the upcoming TCG Aussie Fest in the UK. So just to conclude, I guess, thank you very much for listening. What we ask of you is that you work with trade and ITOs and make sure contracts and rates are up to date. And as mentioned, please share your updates and news. It's very welcome. We have a lot of touch points and a lot of conversations. And so if your news is front of mind, then you'll get mentioned. Tag us in your socials so that we can maximise your exposure through our own channels. And we'll continue to fly the flag and represent you in all our regions. So thank you for your time. And I really look forward to seeing you all at ATE. Thank you.